On the evening of May 12th, the Prime Minister appeared on our TV screens once again to announce, among other things, that his government would unveil a 20 lakh crore rupee economic package to soften the blow dealt to the economy by the coronavirus and help kickstart the path to recovery. The amount, the Prime Minister informed us, is around 10% of India's GDP, which is great, frankly, because the previous economic package the government announced at the beginning of the first phase of the lockdown was pretty paltry, at less than 1% of the GDP. But as details of the package were revealed by the finance minister in the following week, any hope that this government would finally respond to the crisis with a stimulus big enough to tackle it were lost. What the vast number of India's working population and the vulnerable who cannot work needed in their moment of desperation was a state that intervened in the economy directly on their behalf. What they got instead, as we shall discuss in a bit, is a giant steaming pile of which not only fails to provide much of a relief, but will actually heap misery on them in the immediate future. But the inefficacy and cruelty of the economic package should not surprise us. Indeed, it is to be expected because this package is a toxic distillation of the trends and policies of the last 30 years, like a cocktail of nuclear wastewater and chemotherapy drugs, combining the rot of neoliberal economics with the ruling party's determination to be the most pro-capitalist government this country has ever seen. Allow me to explain. The government's primary concern seems to be maintaining fiscal responsibility, which is a central pillar of neoliberal theology. To this end, nearly 60% of this so-called package, amounting to almost 12 lakh crore rupees, is in the form of liquidity measures announced by the RBI, in addition to credit guarantees for non-banking finance companies, loans, credit guarantees and equity infusion for MSMEs, and provisions for providing working capital to street vendors and farmers in the form of credit. The additional fiscal burden of the central government this year from all these measures is less than 0.11% of the GDP. An admirable achievement if one is obsessed with maintaining the fiscal deficit, but an absolute disaster if you want to revive the economy and provide some relief to those who are suffering for easily discernible reasons. The RBI liquidity measures are meant to induce banks to lend more money to businesses, as are the measures for NBFCs. But in a situation where demand, which was squeezed even before the lockdowns, is now essentially decimated, it makes no sense for businesses to take loans to invest when there is no one who has the money to buy their products. MSMEs that do take out loans to stay afloat during the crisis will also have trouble repaying these loans as demand is expected to remain muted, harming the viability of these businesses. The government is aware that these loans are probably not going to be paid back, and its solution to this has been to declare that it will guarantee loans issued by banks and NBFCs to MSMEs, which means that in case the businesses are unable to pay the loans, the government will step in and pay them back. The rationale of this strategy is to induce lending irrespective of the prospects of recovery, which means that the government has essentially taken risk out of the equation. This opens up the financial system to all kinds of abuse because banks don't need to be prudent while issuing loans. They will get paid back anyway, and the individual taking the loan has no responsibility to pay it back because they don't have anything to lose because the loans are collateral free. The government has also extended credit guarantees to NBFCs, a sector that is less prudent as a source of lending than banks and has seen massive corruption and fraudulent behavior in the last couple of years. These guys were doing all kinds of shady stuff when things were normal. Imagine how wild they'll get with a government guarantee behind their back. What we'll see as a result of all this is a ballooning of bad loans with the government footing the bill. Some of these might be genuine losses of businesses going under, but a big chunk of them will be from fraudulent individuals and entities gaming a system that is quite literally begging to be abused. The upshot of this supply side strategy will be that lakhs of crores of rupees will never reach the real economy and will instead be routed around the financial system before finally accruing as government losses in the coming years. Not only will there be no immediate relief for crores of people looking for a livelihood now, but government losses will be used as an excuse to cut expenditures, especially on social programs, further intensifying and prolonging misery in the near future. In contrast to the lakhs of crores rained down on the financial sector to gamble and cheat with, the neoliberal state, even during a crisis of this magnitude, is unwilling to loosen its purse strings to prevent widespread hunger and starvation that is happening all around us. There have been repeated calls for universalization of food distribution for at least 6 months to address the exclusions and operational glitches of the ration card system. Yet there was no such provision made in the government's economic package. It's not like there is a shortage of food grains because the Food Corporation of India is sitting on more than 70 million tons of it, with another 40 million tons estimated to be procured from the recent harvest. There is concern for leakages and misuse, but those are not convincing arguments for excluding people even during normal circumstances. In the middle of a pandemic and economic collapse, there is in fact a need to strengthen and revitalize the public distribution system to undo the disrepair it has fallen into in the last 3 decades so that food is freely available to anyone who wants it with minimal leakages. A simple measure like marking the fingers of people who avail PDS services with indelible ink can help with identification of beneficiaries, but no. We have to continue with the targeted approach to welfare because, hey, we sure don't want precious government funds to be wasted due to misuse, and if millions of people suffer lifelong consequences of hunger and starvation or lose their lives, well, that's just how the world works. This fiscal prudence, however, is only applicable when it may benefit the people who do all the work. For those who profit off of their labor, there is total fiscal profligacy. Another illustration of this double standard is the insanely low allocations for cash transfers in the government's economic package. A grand total of 33,000 crore rupees so far, and less than half the amount is fresh spending from the government's coffers. With nearly a quarter of the workforce unemployed, people need money in their hands right now, not just to survive, but also to revive some demand, however muted, so that the downward spiral of the economy may be halted. What the government is offering, though, are loans for street vendors and farmers, a strategy that once again ignores the reality of institutional exclusion while also adding to the debt burden of the most vulnerable. The absurdity of it all is almost comical were it not for the grave consequences that will follow. The total fiscal burden from this economic package has been estimated at a little over 1%, a ridiculously low number given the scale of the crisis the country is facing. At a time when the usual arguments to keep the deficit in check, that it will lead to inflation or it will crowd out private investment, are revealed to be unsustainable, and even fiscal hawks are calling for a bigger stimulus, why is the government still so obsessively concerned with it when it knows that hundreds of millions of lives are at stake? The answer can be found in a comment the Indian Express recorded from a government source in April around the time details of the package were probably being worked out. With a BBB negative sovereign rating, we are still investment grade, and unlike 2008 when the government's fisc was in order and it could manage to give a massive stimulus, it doesn't have that cushion now. One notch below BBB negative, and India will slip into speculative grade rating. Translated into plain language, the government's rationale is that it is more important to ensure that rating agencies and international investors are not spooked by a worsening deficit than to prevent mass-scale death and destitution. Investors over people, that is the unspoken principle of neoliberalism at all times, but it takes on a uniquely terrifying and cruel dimension in our current moment. In a recent interview, the journalist P. Sainath commented that the coronavirus crisis has presented India and the world with an autopsy of the corpse of neoliberal policy. I would differ from Sainath only to suggest that while neoliberalism may be on its deathbed, it is certainly not dead. Indeed, there is a yearning in the business and finance community to go back to normalcy, back to how things were before the lockdown started hurting earnings and profits. But a return to normalcy means something entirely else for the majority of this country's population. For them, it will mean even lower wages as mass unemployment pulls wages down. It will mean increasingly intensified workplace exploitation as we will no longer even pretend to care about labor laws. It will mean greater exposure to ecological disasters and the effects of air, water, and soil degradation as environmental laws are discarded to improve the ease of doing business. And it will mean falling through the gaping holes of our social security net because we've deliberately made sure that there are more holes and less net. No, we cannot afford to go back to normal. We cannot go back to investors over people. And we cannot say that the cure for our problems is an even more dangerous form of the disease that ails us. Neoliberalism as it stands today is intellectually bankrupt and morally disgusting. It needs to die, and we need to start digging its grave.
What did you hear? There's a natural order. Those most deserving will end up with the most. That the cream cannot help but always rise up to the top. Well, I say, shit floats. If you thought things had changed, friend, you better think again. Bluntly put in the fewest of words, counts are still running the world. Counts are still running